And a very happy Monday to you at 12:08 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wanks at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, President Joe Biden is in Europe this week ahead of the big NATO conference. He sat down with CNN's Fareed Zakaria talking about some of the challenges of admitting a country like Sweden into the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
And so what I'm trying to, quite frankly, put together is a little bit of a consortium here.
That interview was machine gun fire, for quite frankly.
I'm halfway through the interview. I found the first one, waiting to find the others.
And so what I'm trying to, quite frankly, put together is a little bit of a consortium here.
It's going to be an Easter egg hunt, but you're going to find more. That I can promise you.
Quite frankly.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Hope all of you had a wonderful weekend. I went to the Angel-Dodger game on Saturday, and as an Angel fan, I can tell you it was awful.
I'm going to guess you didn't stay till the end of that one.
No, I did, because it was the biggest sellout of the year for Dodger Stadium, so it takes you longer than the game to get out of the parking lot after the game.
So you had to just sit there and take it.
They've been able to speed up how long the pitchers take between pitches. How do you speed up the parking lot at Dodger Stadium? What do we have to do?
Well, somebody thinks if they build that gondola, that's going to solve it. Except then somebody else, Ulysses Hernandez, wants to put that road on a road diet.
Yeah, right. That's just going to give the homeless another place to do math.
How dare you?
All right. It was quite a weekend, quite a last week or so in terms of crime stories here in the state of California. So let's go ahead and open up the show today by taking a look at the KABC Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions? No. Go forward! No!
Now, Randy, I want to be technically correct with how I describe this next story. I'm not going to say it's the world's oldest profession, but let's just say this. As soon as music was invented, so was this profession.
Two of the hardest working women in the San Fernando Valley were robbed of all the cash they had on them. And because of their profession, they had a lot of cash on them, a lot of $1 bills. That's right, even strippers aren't safe in the San Fernando Valley.
What is going wrong with our society?
Were they followed? Was it an inside job? Did they know they had that much cash on them? Was it because of the way they were dressed? All these questions and more will hopefully be answered as the two strippers who were robbed go on camera with Fox 11 to make sure no other strippers have to go through what they went through.
They were making it rain for the robbers.
All right, it's a terrifying story we're bringing you right now with surveillance video that's gone viral at this point. Two exotic dancers robbed outside their home right after the BET Awards.
Yeah, Brooke Thomas talked with those women about the incident and their warning for others this morning. Brooke, I mean, this is just a reminder that,
get your customers to Venmo you.
Now, what happens if the strippers earn more than $950 in tips?
Well, Gasco won't prosecute it anyway.
You know what I do when I go on the cruise ships? I always bring $2 bills. So if the guys in the strip clubs who were tipping the girls brought $2 bills instead of $1 bills, and they thought they could steal 950 of the dollar bills, and they ended up being $2 bills, then maybe we can put them in jail.
Brooke, I mean, this is just a reminder that, never get too comfortable no matter where you are.
No matter where you are. And it's really scary video. The women say two men actually pointed guns in their faces and stole at least $10,000 in cash they had made throughout the weekend.
They did well.
Whoa. A gun in the face, huh?
And that's local. These aren't even the girls hopping on the Burbank to Vegas flight.
Usually it's rifles that they see.
It happened in Panorama City, and the women tell me...
Okay, here's the thing. I just need to understand this. If you are working as hard as you are at that profession, you're bringing in $10,000 in tips over a weekend. Why the hell are you still living in Panorama City?
And they're not paying taxes.
It happened in Panorama City, and the women tell me...
It's all under the table dance.
It happened in Panorama City, and the women tell me they are traumatized, but do want this to serve as a warning for all women. It was just a regular.
Is it sweeps? They got the real big music for this one.
Well, it's a story involving crime and strippers. Talk about hitting all the pressure points.
This is a story made for Fox 11.
It was just a regular work night for us. Like, we do this all the time, regular. We weren't expecting anything to happen out of the ordinary.
But something did happen.
I'm going to start looking at my pay stubs and see how long it took me to make $10,000 this year.
A lot longer than a weekend, that I can tell you.
But something did happen. It was terrifying, and it happened in the blink of an eye.
So within seconds of us getting out the Uber, because our stuff was in the trunk, we grabbed our stuff in the trunk, just walked right to the front, and then like I heard a yo. I was like, oh my God, like what's going on? So I look, and you know, I don't think we really, in the moment, we didn't really process what was going on.
Two men ran towards these two women, pointing guns in their faces, demanding their belongings. Maya Courtney says she was frozen in fear and didn't even remember her exact movements until watching security footage later.
Yeah, I definitely didn't process that because I didn't even know that one of the guys had cocked the pistol back until I looked at the video and I seen it in the video. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that in the moment.
The thieves.
That is horrifying.
Okay. If you're with the Recall George Gascon campaign, I want you to get in your car right now and you head straight to that strip club in the San Fernando Valley. And you find Cinnamon and you find Kitty Litter and you have them sign the recall petition and you have them make all of their friends sign the petition too. Because if the strippers aren't safe, their names need to be on that petition. Those are votes we can get.
If only the people running that recall campaign weren't grifters.
Thieves took everything, a suitcase full of cash, their overnight bags, purses. The men frisked their bodies, checked their pockets, and snatched their phones. Afterwards...
Oh, come on. Now they can't even call anybody.
Well, they certainly don't want them calling 911, which we'll get to in a minute.
Afterwards, I'm told their first thought was to blame themselves.
Because it was just embarrassing. Like, we're so dumb for even going home at this time. Or we shouldn't have Ubered, or we should have just, like, we was just, like, trying to think of alternatives of what we should have done to avoid that.
This isn't their fault. They are not to blame. That being said, if you're carrying around $10,000 in cash, throw a hundo at the bouncer and have him escort you back to your apartment.
Wait, they're strippers and they're going home. Shouldn't this be at like 6 in the morning?
They got done with the early shift. You got to understand, the bars that serve booze, which are the most lucrative, they have to close at 2.
I see.
How do I know this? I'm not telling.
To avoid that.
The women say other people blame them too, believing they're not worthy of care because of what they do for a living.
A lot of people are like, well, we don't care because of their line of work. That's fine. We're not looking for sympathy. We're trying to bring awareness because at the end of the day, we're females.
They don't care that it happens to us.
Hard-working females.
That's right. And your profession is irrelevant. Everyone who pays taxes, or I guess I shouldn't say that if they're getting paid in all cash, but anyone who lives in the state of California should be able to feel safe in their surroundings. And I don't care what trashy profession you do. Even attorneys should feel safe in this state.
Some people have different talents. Some people are meant for teaching. Some people are meant for twerking.
They don't care that it happens to us because of the line of work that we do. Like, we're strippers, so we don't get sympathy for real.
Their families are helping them cope with what the women tell me is the scariest thing they've ever experienced.
You never know who you're doing this to.
And think of all the things they have seen, all the customers they've had to encounter and do things on laps for.
And this is the worst thing they've seen in their lives.
I've seen the clientele at some of these Valley strip clubs. If they're saying this is the scariest thing they've ever seen, that is saying something.
Traumatizing.
You never know who you're doing this to. Like, we have families. We're somebody's sister,
aunties, friends.
Like, people have their own bills. We have our own lives. We work hard for our money. It doesn't matter if you feel like we don't work hard for our money because we're dancers. We work hard for our money.
I mean, that's how the song goes. She works hard for the money, so you better treat her right.
That's the late, great Tina Turner, right?
No, I don't think that one's Tina Turner. I think that one's Donna Summer.
Okay.
The ladies say they're sharing this video of really their worst experience in an effort to remind women going home late at night, you're having fun, just to make sure you watch your surroundings. They believe these men followed their Uber and waited until their driver left. They say, they were in a good mood. They were talking, they were laughing.
So you got to assume then if they followed the Uber, these two men were patrons of the strip club, saw how much money they were bringing in, and decided to get a piece of that action.
Well, and you know that in California right now it's anything goes, so why not?
They were in a good mood. They were talking, they were laughing, and just not thinking about someone following them. And regardless of money, two men following two women home late at night. It's a terrifying reminder for everyone.
Yeah. And also a reminder if you're holding on to valuables with you, like if you have jewelry on or cash with you, be extra careful.
Right.
Yeah, Michael Moore, he doesn't want anyone walking around with $10,000 in cash.
Oh, no. He doesn't want you leaving empty water bottles in your car.
Or cash with you, be extra careful.
Right.
Because people can see that and spot you.
Exactly, you're right. We've seen this in so many instances. People are giving them a hard time because of what they do for a living, and I think that's been sad.
I don't get that. There are a lot of gigs that people get paid for out here that are more demeaning than strippers.
100%.
I work in talk radio.
People are giving them a hard time because of what they do for a living, and I think that's been sad for others to watch and see.
Let's
People
not get distracted by what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so terrifying with the guns drawn and the thing pulled back.
The fact that they followed them makes me also think about the fact they were probably, keeping track of them for a few days or whatever it is. They knew their routine. They knew who they were. They didn't just out of the blue decide to follow them.
But, this is the kind of behavior that led to that strip club in North Hollywood unionizing.
The SEIU, once they get their nose in the tent, it's all over.
They didn't just out of the blue decide to follow them.
But they could have, actually. Yeah. They could have simply just followed the Uber home. We've seen it happen on so many instances over a watch.
The whole thing is...
over a handbag, over, or things that don't even have to do with money. We've seen men follow women home and something horrible happen.
Just a reminder, never get comfortable.
You never know,
Don't put down your guard.
There you go, Johnny.
All right. If you're the LA County Republican Party and you're listening, go register those two to vote. They were just robbed. They were just traumatized. The state of California failed them. Help make them part of the solution. Now, one of the things that they did after they got robbed was call the police so the police could come down and investigate. This is what most of us do when we're the victim of a crime, unless we've just given up entirely, which many of us have. However, if you call 911 and 911 doesn't work, then you're really on your own. And Randy, that happened in one California city.
That happened in Oakland once last week, and we were going to do a story on it and got too busy. And then over the weekend, it happened again.
And if there's any city in California where you need 911 to operate, it's Oakland.
That's right. Now, twice in the span of a week, the 911 system in the city of Oakland, an incredibly dangerous city, was down because of a little power outage. And it took them a very long time to get everything back up. It was so bad, the city that already has the worst response times in the whole state got even worse. We will have a full investigative piece on that story later on in the hour.
If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Well, Dar writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com in relation to the strippers that got robbed in the Valley of over $10,000 and all their belongings. He'd like to know if we could share the list of Valley strip clubs so we can go support these two women in their endeavors and help replicate their bank accounts.
Oh, what a nice guy.
You know, it is strange. Typically, whenever you hear of a business getting robbed, at the end of the story, they're like, here's the GoFundMe, here's how you can support them. Nowhere in the story did they tell us where these two work. So if I had to assume, based on the fact that they lived in Panorama City, I'm guessing they don't want to commute too far. And I haven't been to one of these in 15 years, but there used to be a Deja Vu on Coldwater. I don't know if it's still there.
Okay. If you happen to encounter these two ladies and you want to tip them, don't forget, they just had a gun stuck in their face. So if you go to your waistband for the dollar bills, you may trigger a Vietnam-style flashback, and you might get kicked in the crotch. Randy, if you missed one of our shows last week and want to go back and listen to the podcast version of it, that's easy to do.
That's right. You just go to KBC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe, and then you can download all of the episodes. It's incredibly easy to do. Anybody could figure out how to do this. Even Barbara Ferrer. You know how to download a podcast, right?
I have no idea.
Okay, she can't do it, but you can.
Over the weekend, for the second time in 7 days, the 911 system went down in the city of Oakland. And let me tell you, you need to be in the city of Oakland without access to 911 like you need a bullet to the back of the head. Stay away, stay far away if you don't have access to the police.
You know, in some cities, like let's say the city of Burbank, if 911 went down, people might not even notice for hours and hours and hours. In Oakland, you notice within seconds.
For more, here's NBC Bay Area.
There's a 911 calling crisis, and in Oakland, it's far worse than any other city or even county in the state. One man tells us...
Once again, number one at something.
Oakland always seems to be at the top of every bad list.
Including baseball teams.
In the state. One man tells us that he had to wait more than 10 minutes to talk to a dispatcher. In another case, an Oakland police officer was stabbed and his 911 calls failed to connect.
Oh, God!
They won't even protect the cops?
To talk to a dispatcher. In another case, an Oakland police officer was stabbed and his 911 calls failed to connect. Investigative reporter Candace Wynn brings this issue to city leaders.
That's the big swoosh.
That's the only thing that works in Oakland.
Oakland's 911 system is waiting to fail catastrophically. Those are words right out of this recent Alameda County grand jury report. Our investigative unit also analyzed statewide call records showing Oakland and another Bay Area 911 center are the worst in the state when it comes to answering times.
Oakland emergency number 19.
Hi, 6th and Jefferson. A police officer just got stabbed by a homeless person.
Oh, my.
Again, entirely predictable.
That's two different anecdotes that are about cops getting stabbed in Oakland, and you wonder why their staffing levels are so low.
Officer Danny Chor was off duty when a woman stabbed him in the neck. The profusely bleeding officer used his cell phone to call 911, and his repeated calls failed to connect, according to a grand jury report at the time.
Yeah, a police officer just got stabbed.
Okay.
The caller is a waste management supervisor. You're hearing her voice because not only were the officer's 911 calls failing to connect, according to the report, her employee, a garbage truck operator who drove past the scene, also tried calling 911, and his calls also could not get through.
Oh, God!
It's really amazing how in the home of Silicon Valley, where we create companies like Apple, Tesla, Uber, you name it, it was probably created here in California. We don't have a 911 system that is reliable. I remember telling the story on the air when I was driving back the back way from Las Vegas earlier this year. I was going through the Mojave National Preserve, so I wasn't in any city, although it says SEMA on the map. I saw a car that was flipped over, and there was no cell service out there anywhere. And I continued driving for an additional 35 miles before I finally found a payphone, which didn't have any coordinates on it, by the way. And they send you to some call center in some big city. I think it was Los Angeles or someplace like that. And precious time just wastes away. And they transfer you from one operator to another. And finally, we just finally said, put us through to someone in Barstow. They'll know where we are. Put us through to someone in Barstow. And the minute I got someone in Barstow, they called a responder in Kelso, and they were on the way, and I passed the responder as I was headed towards Kelso. And I remember thinking to myself, in a state like California, with all of the technology that we have access to, There's no excuse to not be able to get a hold of 911, even if you're in the most rural of places. Well, take the rural places off the table for a second. You can't even get a hold of a 911 operator in one of the biggest cities in the state.
You're hearing his voice only because he's on his supervisor's speakerphone as she called 911 for him. Details about this dangerous delay were published in the civil grand jury's 2019-2020 report, which was prompted by a complaint about long 911 call wait times in Oakland. In 2020,
even when the power works, it's crap.
That tells you it doesn't work.
In 2020, Oakland's average 911 answering time was 28 seconds, nearly double the state and national standard of 15 seconds. According to state 911 data,
I wonder why robbery is so rampant up there.
It's almost as if the crooks know you can't get a hold of the cops.
According to state 911 data obtained by the investigative unit, Oakland's average 911 answering time has gotten far worse. This year, it's nearly doubled to 54 seconds.
Oh, my.
You're on your own up there.
I did call 911, and the experience is absolutely horrible.
Alan Liang owns an Oakland auto shop and uses this tow yard. He says he wishes his 911 calls were picked up in 54 seconds.
When I call 911, usually you're on hold for approximately 10 minutes.
Who do they think they are, Spectrum?
10 minutes?
10 minutes before I live.
10 seconds.
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Just last week, Liang called 911 to report a missing person and says he was on hold for 7 minutes. Last September, he found a crushed body in his tow yard, and this happened.
Imagine that for a second. You find a body in your business, and you call 911, and you get a busy signal.
I don't know if there is a more clear-cut story of an absolute failure of local government than this noise.
He's not calling because Kitty got in a tree and he needs some firefighters over to get it down. He found a body in his tow yard.
So this is where I found the dead body a while back. I immediately dialed 911. I was placed on hold for maybe about 10 to 15 minutes.
And that's after Liang says his 911 calls repeatedly failed to connect.
It's going to get so bad that people, when they discover dead bodies, aren't going to even call 911. They're going to call podcast detectives.
What do? You just have a burial in the tow yard?
And that's after Liang says his 911 calls repeatedly failed to connect, just like what happened with the stabbed officer.
If you call 911 and you hear that fast, busy signal, that means all the 911 lines at your local communications center are busy. Your call won't go through until one of those lines opens up.
In a statement to...
Wait a minute. They don't have someone who can triage things where they answer the phone and they say, okay, what you need to tell us about is a non-emergency, and right now we're short-staffed, so call this number, and then you get to the actual emergencies. They just let them get a busy signal.
In a statement to us, a city spokesperson said long wait times for 911 callers are clearly unacceptable.
Well, then what are you doing about it?
Well, they're saying it's unacceptable. Doing something actually requires initiative.
And that Mayor Sheng Tao has directed that 911 call taker vacancies be given top-tier priority.
Maybe they didn't think they needed to hire more 911 operators because they thought that when the Raiders left Oakland, the riffraff would leave. But it turns out just the Raiders left.
That shows you how bad things are in Oakland right now. Think about this for a second. The Raiders left town and crime went up.
And the Raiders went to Vegas, and Vegas is doing well.
Maybe it wasn't a Raiders problem after all.
But just last week, in the mayor's recently approved city budget, Mayor Tao froze a full-time communication dispatcher position. When we repeatedly asked to sit down with the mayor for an interview about that decision and Oakland's 911 system,
she refused.
We haven't spent a whole lot of time on the new mayor in Oakland, Sheng Thao, but she is in over her head on every possible issue facing that city, and it has become a joke.
And think about this for a second. Every time they say they're going to hire a social worker, every time they say they're going to hire a safety ambassador, that money has to come from somewhere. And the money just doesn't fall from the sky, which means they have to cut the budget in other places. You actually need 911 operators. That's skilled labor. You just can't hire someone at Home Depot and put a headset on them and have them be a 911 operator. That takes training. You have to get the right kind of person, and it doesn't happen overnight. So when you lay these people off or you eliminate these positions, let's say you recognize you have a crisis on your hand, you just can't turn the spigot on. That's not how it works. It takes a long time to train them and get them up and running. So by doing what they did, they put their population in harm's way.
I just feel like the city leaders are not taking this issue seriously.
According to a new civil grand jury report released last month, Oakland's 911 phone system was recently replaced. But Oakland still faces staff shortages, a record number of 911 calls, and 911 software and hardware that is so out of date, the police department is forced to buy replacement parts on eBay.
Well, it is Meg Whitman to the rescue.
How is it with, state government, local government, county governments that collect more taxes than anywhere else in the tech capital of the country? Everyone's still on DOS computers from the 80s.
I wonder if the screens are green.
Motorola has only one technician who still knows how to work on the 20-year-old software.
You better hope he doesn't call in sick.
When asked about the report, the mayor declined an interview again.
There's no good side to the story for her.
Okay, they're now waiting for the ambulance.
Okay.
An ambulance never made it to the Oakland police officer who was stabbed. He was just 2 blocks away from police headquarters. Before his 911 calls could connect, his fellow officers put him in the back of a patrol car.
Yeah, just put him in the car.
Like, forget the ambulance. We're dragging you to the hospital.
You got to do what you got to do.
Put him in the car and you're going to take him to the hospital.
He survived.
I mean, it's getting so bad, people might want to call an Uber.
They'll get there first.
He survived.
But I got to warn you, if you can't get a hold of 911 and you decide to go the route of calling an Uber to get you to the hospital, if you bleed on the car, chances are you're not going to get a 5-star review.
No, you're going to be living that one down for a while.
He survived. But grand jurors at the time said the 911 system's multiple failures in this situation almost cost the officer his life.
It's basically a waste of time, and I just don't dial 911 anymore.
We mentioned that Oakland has the second longest 911 answering time in the state this year. You're probably wondering who has the longest. CHP Golden Gate Division in Vallejo tops the list with an answering time of 56 seconds.
Oh, come on, CHP.
The CHP is supposed to be better than that.
CHP's numbers jumped during the pandemic, and the agency says it is a major 911 hub assisting parts of the entire Bay Area. With the investigative unit, Candace Webb, NBC Bay Area News.
Okay, so you have a lot going on here. You have a city government that essentially doesn't function. You have equipment that is supposed to be replaced that hasn't been replaced. You have an electrical grid that goes out whenever anyone uses a hair blow dryer. And then you have the homeless component. Go back to what the chief of the LA Fire Department said. The chief of LAFD said that 50% of all fires in Los Angeles are started by the homeless. And because the homeless have so much drama, whether they're starting fires or stabbing one another or fill in the blank, the call volume of the 911 system in Los Angeles is being pushed to the breaking point because whenever they have trouble, that's who they call. Well, if you want the 911 system to not be overwhelmed, you've got to dial back the drama, which means you've got to clean out the homeless encampments. Just because the encampments aren't in your specific neighborhood doesn't mean that the encampments aren't wrecking your city. And when you need certain services and you can't get them because of the homeless, it probably never even occurs to you that that's why it's happening. Because when you're having your heart attack or your home is on fire or you have some emergency where you need someone to respond right away, but some crackhead is having an overdose, some guy on meth is having an episode, and they're on 911 waiting for help, that call could have been yours. And maybe you're the one getting the busy signal. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Well, Will writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com in response to the city of Oakland failing on their 911 system twice in the span of a week and response times as high as a minute on just a regular good day. Will writes in, on the show Reno 911, the cops think they're important, but they're really just clowns. In the show Oakland 911, we rest assured knowing that the cops and the civilians are all equally screwed when 911 fails.
We're getting flooded with emails and tweets and messages, various places, about the glitch in the system on the web feed. If you're listening online at kabc.com or iHeart or any of those services where you can hear us live, apparently when we go to commercial break, there's some glitch in the system that's replaying old shows. Our tech people are on it. We hope that they fix it sometime very soon so you can go back to enjoying the show like you normally do, and we can go back to getting obscene emails about Katie Porter.
The crazy drunk Martha Stewart woman was funny the first time. It was even funny the second time. But if you've heard that call 75 times on the stream, I apologize.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
I
It'll
honestly
be fixed sometime today.
I don't even know how that stuff got there.
I don't know either. And it's no one in-house that operates the feed. It's some other company, right?
Yes, that operates our stream and the other streams in the Cumulus family. And I don't understand it. I'm very confused. It shouldn't be this difficult. Like we were going off on 911. We live in the tech capital of the world right here. We can't get an internet stream to work.
We got to get someone on the phone at the home office in Sioux City, Iowa.